see now the slides were prepared for the German Bürgerschaft because that are the main German politicians 20 years ago, and that's actually not really, it's supposed to be fun. And yeah, because in today it looks good. Now, this looks strange because if you take a look into a Rebol at first, it is very strange. Yeah, it is maybe almost like it's fun. Also, German minister, he does a lot of things most hackers in Germany don't like. That's why her face is actually crazy. There's inside jokes. It is shock therapy because there are a lot of things you take for granted that aren't there in the Rebol. Yes, like I said, the best thing is throw out your brain and start from scratch. It's maybe the best thing. Yeah. And to really learn Rebol, you have to know 4 concepts. Yeah, and then you're basically done with the language. Yeah, that's Merkel today. Leader of the Christian Party and her boss. These 4 terms are words, data types, series, and refinements. Words, of course, are hard for us to understand because probably we call them scalar, because we can throw whatever we want into the scalar and it saves us parts. That's also done in Rebol, except they are done for everything. For the built-ins, for variables, for routines, everything are words. There are no separate namespaces like we have in Perl with a nice dollar. Then we know, for instance, $A is something completely different than the routine A. Not here. As a beginner in Rebol, you may be sometimes part of that problem. Let's screw yourself a few times. And then you learn. Also, I knew because I wrote some stuff. Then you have the data types, because what's one of the really surprising features of Rebol is it is strictly typed. Yeah, and it's also something we are not used to. Of course, we have the usual things like integer, string, tuple, pair, something we already we now get into 6, and of course block. And we have also data types that are not as common in other languages, like the data type money, file, URL, EML, email. Like I said, Rebol is optimized for the practical things in the everyday programming stuff, and you get hard checks that the data is correct in these things, and so the compiler will maybe find or interpreter if you mess up things here.
What is interesting is that in Rebol we have are not just data type, but you have a syntax for the literals for this all these data types. So you really don't have to add quotes around the new URL.
Yeah.
You just
HTTP. I will come to it. It's the next issue is something. It's like I think that's a curly brackets there. If you're so familiar.
Obviously not.
No. It's the samples I've seen is they have like books and the number of the books. So about like an issue, like a more data type that you can in tables match against. This is like an ID.
Like versioning or something?
No. It was.
Sounds more like a hash literal.
No. Yes, something sort of that. But they overloaded. Many things they rarely yet in Rebol they overloaded and used issue. That also. But sorry, I'm not in my mind now in this corner. Maybe I remember it. Of course, series is what we call lists or arrays in Perl, but also hashes because they don't have explicit hashes. They just use their arrays and do some tricky magic with it. And also
version of Rebol that I looked at, the string was just considered to be a list of numbers. Is that still the case?
No. It is, yes, in some ways that are operations on lists act on strings in the context of strings as it was an array, but is a data type, as we see. It's a scalar, it's one value, but if you take words, they act on it as a word. And this concept is pretty much also what we know in Lisp, for instance, and other languages too. And the refinements, that what gives us slices and also what us modify the return values of routines, which, if used wisely, makes the syntax really readable. For instance, you want the time and you want just maybe the weekday. You write time/weekday, and it's perfectly clear what you want, and what you get. Like I said, these are the four concepts. If you have a drop on them, then the rest will flow. Okay. There are some other syntactic differences, but like a comment. The reason why I compared it with TCL, because you have also the nice get and set. We don't even have the equal. The equal is just for if you want to compare something. Yeah, you have if you double colon before it, if you some data in it. If you want data out, make it on the other side that are like get. And just to call it without the colon is evaluate. It's often an important difference because sometimes you have a function, and if you use that, you get the function of it, the block where all the commands are. If you take without, it will be eval. Yeah. Of course, if in the word is just a normal value, there it will be no difference between it. Like I said, what?
It seems like bad Huffman coding to me.
Please explain it after. I'm interested. Like I said, the refinements are made with slash, and subcode is the same as calling variable, and parameters you can use parentheses, but you don't have. There will be signature matching, and there will know which parameters go in and where the calls end. And if you nest, you nested the calls. We see that. It's just one example of many, which are, even if Rebol tries out because of the restriction, is not as nice as the code. It's really one very little example. And also one thing, on the other hand, I like Rebol more is, for instance, the penguins and some other basic methods which should be in code. But aren't. And this is also one example of many that Rebol was its way to have things you need daily in your program like in core already, make it easy. Which is not always the case in Perl when it throws the core for us today. But it has its reasons because Perl is on many large systems. We can touch that. We all know the reason, but we have now Perl 6. Talking of Perl 6, there are many similarities. That's also a way for me to see that if people really try hard to think about that, they come up with some similar looking things. There are some trivial examples, just forever loop, which is loop in Perl 6, or like this all and none is not as adjunctive, but meaning what we call in switch where breaks default is in order, but or also that pair is a native type. But what I will now come to is the thing with the Rebels and the heavy use of LMD and such thing. Yeah.
When you say no break and switch, do you mean you don't need a break and switch, or that doesn't do a break automatically?
You know how it is in physics.
It's not the same.
Yes,
Yeah,
that you don't have to break and
You don't have to
close.
yeah.
And then they turn that around.
Good.
It's just nicer to have.
Yes.
And this is just one thing when I learned Rebol, what came to my mind is there are really a lot of similarities, not in syntax but in concept, and that's all me. Yes, looking into a Rebol syntax, the first thing is the metadata. Rebol itself is a reserved word which contains the metadata, which can nicely assessed. So you know always, so refinement, Rebol title, get title, or it's all just convention. But as you said, for instance, the class browser can also sort things by date nicely, or can put programs you wrote nicely in category. So if you browse your things, you can intermediate, or you can do your own categories and find your scripts nicely. It's done all by the distribution. And because, like I said, it's not only by the syntax and the code, it's also the distribution. They really push hard the limit to make things just work how they should. And the things you maybe never will, the real Rebol, there is some free downloadable version, but there is also the SDK, if you want a real professional application with it, which is for $300, or if you buy on the net for $250, and many parts are not really open source, which I think for most of you is a showstopper. Like I said, we made a company and you want to make money also with it, and that's okay. But not for me, but for me. Also, it's okay that you want to make money, but I don't just use it. And that's also understandable that there's a drive behind it that really solves this issue, that it gets really practical and it's not an academic language. And one of the things is also get the metadata strike. Yeah, there are a lot of modes like purpose, comment nodes, but they are all optional. Like I said, the GUI is very, very dense. I never seen anything like this, that you can easily read through a layout. There is a text. Yeah, I put your value from one is copied from one of my scripts. Then there is a button, and you need no layout manager, because what you need, what you want default when you build a GUI, there should be some borders, or it should be centered. That things you take for given. Of course, if you want it more specialized, you can refine the things, because when I not would say view layout, but at least layout and put it in a variable and then dump it, you get not kilometers but a long text. Because when this in this context of layout, there are many words, and this text and button will translate it a lot of settings in colors and alignments and all the nitty-gritty GUI stuff, which you don't have to see in the start. Yeah, and yes.
Didn't you say earlier that it's easier for Rebol to do this because it's making the operating system it's sitting on, if it's somewhere else, do a lot of the work for it with this?
That's WX.
Oh, sorry.
That